Strange, isn't it, Kain, that one cannot quite accept that which sustains him. You in your death, and me in mine. But death cannot reign in a world without life, and soon you will find the quest ahead of you is yours and yours alone. I can assist you no longer.
One of my favourite character arcs in fiction is that of the Atoner, someone who commits a reprehensible act and then sets out on a personal journey to make things right. It's gratifying to see a character try to make amends for the harm they've caused after realising the error of their ways. In the Legacy of Kain series, I'd argue Mortanius the Necromancer most embodies this theme of atonement. Mortanius' history traces back to the early days of Nosgoth, during a time when the world was ruled by an ancient winged race. While exploring the vampire citadel, Kain discovered a mural depicting the ancient vampires struggling to maintain the integrity of the pillars they created. These beings, now cursed with sterility, found and adopted human successors to replenish the ranks of their fallen Gaurdians. Mortanius was one of many children brought into the fold after the Pillar of Death had chosen him as its guardian. However, not all human children elected to come willingly, and some were abducted from their families and compelled to turn into vampires when they came of age. It is unknown whether or not Mortanius was taken by force, but undoubtedly he harboured ill feelings towards the vampires and disapproved of their methods. At any rate, the mural unveiled several significant truths. It revealed that Mortanius was one of the most ancient members of the Circle, serving the Pillar of Death for some 2,500 years before the main events of Blood Omen 1, that he rejected the dark gift of vampirism and renounced the teachings of the ancients, and that he, alongside his fellow guardian Mobius, led a brutal rebellion against his former masters. Together, Mortanius and Mobius started a war that toppled entire bloodlines and ultimately brought the ancient vampire society to its knees. It is said that Mortanius' arcane powers had grown over the centuries, making him arguably the most powerful sorcerer in all of Nosgoth. As the Death Guardian, his powers granted him dominion over the grave. He could summon a diverse range of undead creatures, including zombies, skeletons, and shadowy spectres, to do his bidding, and he was also capable of shifting between the material and spectral planes. In Blood Omen, he was seen with Kain in what can be described as a hellish fire and brimstone landscape, which is essentially an early imagining of the underworld. In Defiance, it's possible for Raziel to approach Mortanius and have a conversation with him in the spectral realm, confirming to us the Necromancer's ability to shift and exist between both realms with ease. Despite his vast magic, Mortanius was a man who tried to act in the world's best interests. His character biography in Silicon Knight's Complete Guide to Legacy of Kain states his immense power was tempered with mercy and judgment. While his role required him to maintain balance between life and death, he often assumed the position of judge, jury, and executioner. In the aftermath of Vorador's infamous assault on the Circle, Mortanius personally passed judgment on Malek. He punished the disgraced Sarafan for failing to protect his fellow Guardians, stripping Malek's spirit from his body and fusing it to his armour. It was his magic that seized the Sarafan's soul and reduced his body to a skeleton. However, I don't think Mortanius ever realised Mobius' part in delaying Malek during the slaughter. In sentencing Malek, Mortanius genuinely believed he gave the Sarafan a punishment befitting his crime. He was convinced Malek's vanity led to the deaths of the others. In actuality, it was the Time Streamer's deceptions which perverted Mortanius' desire for justice, and Malek was left to shoulder all of the blame. It's interesting to note that Mortanius was the only Pillar Guardian absent during Vorador's attack. His whereabouts remain unaccounted for, and following the release of Soul Reaver 2, director Amy Hennig hinted that there may be more to his absence than meets the eye. Indeed, whatever Mortanius was up to during this pivotal scene was kept secret, and the writers may have been saving this plot point for a significant reveal later on had the series continued. When fashioning a name for the Necromancer, the developers seem to have taken inspiration from the Latin word mortalitatis, meaning mortality in English, which fits well with the character's title as Guardian of Death. Before Blood Omen's release, several marketers urged for more accessible and less fanciful names, and while several other NPCs' designations were altered, the writers stood their ground on calling him Mortanius, and the name made it into the final product. Unlike his name, Mortanius' design underwent several key changes since his first appearance. In Blood Omen 1, he has a distinct bony look. His face is thin and skull-like, and his midsection appears to expose his ribcage. Apparently, Silicon Knights originally intended that the toils of his magical practices with the dead had morphed him into little more than a skin and bone husk, whose fragility belies his true power. In Legacy of Kain's 5th entry, Defiance, his deathly image is mostly toned down. His skull-like face was reworked into a mask, which the character could summon or dismiss with magic. When removing the mask, his real face is shown to have typical human skin, which is thin and a bit withered as a result of his advanced age, but not skeletal. His flesh-like body and ribcage were also remade into clothing, giving him an unquestionably human appearance to go with his dark slick hair and soul-patch beard. In discussing his redesign, lead artist Daniel Kabuko said that the original appearance of the character gave people the impression that Mortanius might be some kind of wraith. This would have only muddled the narrative after introducing actual wraiths to the story, like Raziel. In order to address this issue, the artists behind Defiance changed him to be more in line with the Circle. The Death Mask was a useful tool to explain Mortanius' appearance in Blood Omen, while making sure audiences understood that he was essentially human. In creating the Death Mask, the team also tied it back to the original vampires, as the murals in Vorador's mention showed this ancient race had used something similar. Cut dialogue from Blood Omen tells us that Mortanius' motives were also revised over the course of the first game's development. As many of us know, his mind was not always his own. He was possessed by a dark entity who forced him into murdering Ariel, which in turn led to her lover Necromancer's corruption of the Pillars. In the canonical storyline, responsibility for Ariel's murder doesn't rest with Mortanius, but the dark entity who controlled him. Mortanius was in conflict with his Hilden possessors, and there's no indication he resented Necromancer and Ariel's romance. Yet at one point, Ariel's murder was supposed to be a deliberate act, with Mortanius claiming full responsibility for the deed. In a deleted scene with the Alchemist Anarcrothe, Mortanius was originally meant to admit to having killed Ariel of his own accord, claiming her reckless love of Necromancer as justification for what he did.
You are the Circle's traitor.
No, Anarcrothe, I am its savior. The Circle was damned before my deeds. At the onset, I blamed Ariel. She was the balance of the Circle. She and Necromancer with their love threatened us all. With their union, how could there be balance? Yes, I killed her. But Necromancer's vengeance, for me, 'twas both blessing and curse. His pain split my soul in two. Part of me shared his anguish, a grief so fierce it would destroy the world. And yet the other found revelation. For the first time, through the haze of madness, I saw truth. The problem did not lie in one of us, it lay in us all. We are relics, old friend. Remnants of an era long gone, seeking to play gods in a world that no longer needs us. Our death shall resurrect the world.
This dialogue was changed, and the argument between Mortanius and Anarcrothe played out very differently in Blood Omen's retail version.
You betrayed us, Mortanius. You had Kain killed and turned him into a monster. You set him upon us.
It had to be. Necromancer's insanity poisoned all of our minds. The Circle had failed in its sworn duties. It had to be destroyed.
Failed our duties? Idiot! The Circle exists for us. We don't exist for it. Our powers will save or damn Nosgoth at our whim. Stand with us, Mortanius, or die.
Then I shall die.
If the Circle is to be destroyed, you have to die as well, Necromancer. I admire your cunning, but you will not escape your fate.
Nay, I will embrace it. But my death will leave one more to take, Princeling. Finish me!
What I like about this scene is how it sheds light on the reasons for Mortanius' actions. Up until this point, all we really know about the Necromancer is that he had a hand in resurrecting Kain as a vampire and guided him to purge the Circle of its deranged Guardians. In most of his interactions with Kain, Mortanius claimed the young vampire would have his revenge, first against his assassins and then their masters. As it turns out, Kain's assassins were secretly hired by Mortanius himself. I think it's quite telling that among all of the corrupted Guardians, only Mortanius stood up for what's right. He alone acknowledged his responsibilities as a member of the Circle and fulfilled his duty to apprentice Kain, while the rest of his comrades fell victim to Nutraptor's madness, with some choosing to wreak havoc across the land. Mortanius acted righteously despite the corruption that infected his mind. In Defiance, he confesses he's atoning for much more than just his role in Ariel's death. In his early years, he championed humanity's dominion over the Pillars, and the Seraphans' rise to power, although his rebellion may have come from a place of noble intentions. He regarded the vampire's passing of the blood curse as a despicable act, and there's a good chance his decision to overthrow them was influenced by a desire to protect humanity against a perceived evil. As time passed, Mortanius' loyalties wavered, and he elected to compromise his integrity for the sake of power. In the history preceding Blood Omen, both he and Lady Azimath unearthed an ancient evil beneath Avernus. Intrigued by the forces which dwelled there, Mortanius lowered his defences and was seduced away from serving the Pillars. He invited malevolent forces to infiltrate and subvert the Circle without understanding their true nature. Through his creation and servitude of the Hashagig cult, he had made himself vulnerable to possession. Having unwillingly murdered Ariel while under the Hildens' control, Mortanius came to fathom his sworn duties and appreciate the gravity of the situation. He realised the Hildens' plans to topple the Pillars would cause an imbalance of catastrophic proportions. From that moment on, he despised them and began to sympathise with his old vampire masters. He finally understood that the blood curse was a necessary evil, as humans are easily corrupted. Mortanius then spent the next 30 years trying to repair the damage he'd done, and did all he could to return the Pillars to vampire ownership. In Blood Omen, he was voiced by Tony J, however the role was later recast, with Alistair Duncan providing the voice work for the Necromancer in Defiance. Director Amy Hennig stated that the use of a new actor was to avoid confusion. Prior to the release of Defiance, fans were already circulating theories of a possible connection between the Elder God and Mortanius, since they both initially shared the same voice actor. Hennig wanted to dispel that idea and make it clear that these two characters were entirely separate individuals. While Tony J's voice is phenomenal, it's easily recognised, and the intention was not to have the Elder God and Mortanius sound the same. Thus, Alistair Duncan stepped into the role and delivered a captivating performance.
Come to me, my undead son. Make haste to the Pillars. The stage is set for the grand finale. You will have your vengeance.
Mortanius!
So, you have come out into the open at last. The binding must be fragile indeed. But you will find you are too late.
What am I too late for this time?
No, not now. You are too late for the victory you sought. I have beaten you after all.
You have mistaken my identity.
Have I? You forget who schooled me in the ancient prophecies. This vessel speaks truly. You are indeed overdue, but it no longer matters in the least. With or without you, we will prevail.
So, I finally meet the unspoken. And here it is, nestled in the heart of the circle itself. Ironic.
Poetic justice. To topple the foundations of the pillars from within. We shall have our revenge in full measure and for all time. This one has little strength left. One must not break him. Your kind does not like to lose.
I seek the heart of darkness.
Ah, now you think of that. But as I told you, you are too late. The heart has served its function. I have used it to set prophecy in motion. I created the champion foretold by my masters, who is destined to be your destroyer. The Scion of Balance will save Nosgoth. The Pillars will return to vampire guardianship as intended, and your race will be cast down forever.
Kain. You use the heart of darkness to create Kain.
How else? I refused at first to believe the ancient myths. I thought the vampires were simply a plague upon mankind, a pestilence we had to control. But they were right, and we were wrong to overthrow them, Mobius and I. We didn't understand what it was the Pillars were holding back. I have made my atonement. I will continue to make it to the end, which will be soon now. But I know Kain will set it right. He will restore balance. And none too soon. My enemy is growing stronger.
Mortanius admitted that he and Mobius were at fault for rebelling against the ancient vampires. It appears he was not aware that the Time Streamer was acting under orders from the Elder God. In fact, I imagine he had no idea the Elder God orchestrated their revolt, and had probably assumed Mobius's motives for betraying the vampires aligned with his. In the end, Mortanius's act of atonement was to create the Sign of Balance using Heart of Darkness. He believed the Scion, whom he thought was also the vampire hero, would destroy the Hilden's champion and ensure they were banished forever. Much like Janos Audrin, Mortanius's interpretation of the ancient prophecies was incorrect. Kain was not the vampire hero. That role belonged to Raziel, who was both champions all along. Nevertheless, despite his flawed understanding of the prophecies, Mortanius had succeeded in creating Kain, the Scion of Balance, who was destined to play a fundamental role in saving Nosgoth.
Check and mate. This deed will redeem first me and then all Nosgoth. It must. This one grows weak, but we will soon have a stronger vessel. The long-awaited hour approaches. Our release is at hand. I must finish it now.
By the end of his long life, Mortanius was portrayed as an earnest man, bearing the weight of the world on his shoulders. Seeking to atone for his crimes, he willingly embraced his impending death, ensuring first that the rest of the circle fell before perishing at Kain's hands. Really, it's rather remarkable how Mortanius resisted both the Hilden's influence and the Praptor's mental poisoning, while remaining steadfast and sincere in his desire to heal the land. It must have taken incredible willpower to struggle against such powerful forces, yet even with the odds stacked against him, Mortanius resolved to do the right thing. His character is proof that no matter one's past actions, it's always possible to change for the better, even in a dark, twisted world like Nosgoth. But I'm eager to hear your thoughts on Mortanius. What do you think about his redemption arc? Let me know. As always, leave a like if you enjoyed the video, and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. I have a large collection of Legacy of Kain content here on YouTube, so consider checking those videos out as well. It's always awesome to see so much interest in the series. Have a great day everyone. Peace.